in Tennessee, and we love it.
That is so cool. Well,
Yeah.
I met James. James came here, and immediately I was asking him how much he enjoyed the South, and I didn't realize that he's guided out west and kind of from fishing to. I mean, he's definitely the adventurous outdoorsman.
He loves it. He
so
spent
he's
a couple
right
of years
in Tennessee and figuring it all out.
Well, they got me involved in the world of hunting. You know, when they introduced me to you and the Bone Collector, the show, and then Duck Dynasty with duck hunting, and that's how we met the Robertsons. And then we've been going there around Christmas time for about the last 8 years to go duck hunting every year. And so we absolutely love it. And now James and I are working together on a new podcast that I just started about 2 months ago.
Nice.
And we're having a great time together. So we go duck hunting every year, and this last year was real special because we went about a month before Phil passed away.
Wow. Yeah.
And we had a very special experience. Can I just share a quick story?
No, I'd love to hear it. I mean, I love Phil.
So Phil was the patriarch,
right,
of the whole family, you know, and he was the one that I really took to more so than anybody else because he just had so much wisdom and he was so committed to the right stuff. And anyway, we would always hope to have time with Phil in the midst of all the duck hunting and all the good times with the family and friends. And this time, we took my daughter's boyfriend with us. And he has been watching Phil's podcast for a long time. Mm-hmm. And it has been very inspirational to him in him coming to faith in the Lord. Because he had a real rough background as well and his family situation and growing up in Texas. And so he was so inspired and thought maybe we'd get a chance to say hi to him. Well, he's been growing in his faith. And my daughter told me that he was interested in becoming baptized. And so I called Phil and Jace Robertson and said, hey, here's the situation. If the opportunity presents itself, is there any chance this guy could come get wet down at the river with Phil presiding over the baptism? And they said, let's go. Let's do it. So I talked to the young man while we were having coffee at sunset one night, and I asked him what he'd think about baptism. And he said that, man, he's ready. He wants to do it. And so we went over there, and Jace Robertson sat down with him for about an hour before they went to the river and said, listen, if you're just here because you think it's cool to have a Duck Dynasty guy baptize you, he said, then we're not going to do this.
Right.
He said, you tell me what baptism is about. And, you know, he kind of gave a real simple answer, and he said, no. He says, this is not just something where you check the box and say your next step in your spiritual journey or an outward profession of your inward faith. He goes, we're going down there to have a funeral. We're about to bury an old man. He said, you tell me the name of the old man we're going to bury and why he needs to die.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the coolest thing. And
wow.
Phil, who has been sick, is just sitting there watching his son speak to a young man about the beginning of his spiritual journey. And you could tell he was so proud of him because Jace just took over. I mean, I think
kind of speaking of chief, kind of is taking over that chief position.
That's right. And he said, you need to go bury an old man. And if you're not ready to have that funeral, then we're not going down there because you're just wasting your time and I'm wasting my time. And then he finally said, I'm ready to bury the old man. And so they got up and we all walked down to the river, and I've got a picture that I'll share with Ryan. And it's just a beautiful picture. And there he is in the water with Jason, his camo waders, his duck waders.
Holy cow.
And he's dunking him in the water while Phil is just sitting there by the river's edge watching him, praying for him, taking it all in. And he came out, the old man buried, the new man risen to new life. And it was a memory I'll never forget. And then it was probably just a month later that Phil passed away.
It's so crazy that almost even then, it sounds like from that description, Phil almost knew. It's almost there was a part of he was just looking on like, okay, I could do all of this, but it's important. Jace has got this, and he was proud to see that in that case with your family to be able to watch that. That's pretty touching story, actually.
I think that's what he lived for.
I do too.
And he said it. so many times in so many ways, he was always about the gospel. No matter where you went, no matter who he talked to, that's all he really wanted to discuss. And then getting you baptized, of course. And he even made that video that went viral where he said, one day you're going to hear that Phil Robertson is gone. And he always said, it's not goodbye, it's just see you later.
Yeah.
And he talked about that death is coming to everybody, and it's the final act of redemption, that I'm going to go and be with Jesus forever, and I'm going to have my spiritual body. I'm going to be free from sin and pain and all these things. And he's saying, this is what it's all about. And one day I'm going to be there. And of course,
golly,
he was there.
He was
As you're
there.
watching that video, he was gone. He did relocate.
I think that's what I love the most about his testimony and the way he could pull people into the Christian faith and believing in Jesus is because it's funny. Just prior to you arriving, we were talking, some of our producers, we were just chatting about everything that's going on in the world. And even going back into the COVID situation, there was a part of me that I felt that even the church failed during this COVID because the fear of death becomes so viral that it was scaring people in the case of passing away. But every time I'd ever talked with Phil specifically, and there was one preacher, the guy that led me to Christ when I was 12, his name was Brother Gordy, and he was an older guy then, and he'd always love that song, "What a day it will be when my Jesus I shall see." And he sang that. He would sing that. He said, "I know y'all might not want to hear it, but I'm going to sing a special." He'd sing that song.
Yeah.
And on his deathbed, I remember having a chance to see him there toward the end, and he was so peaceful and so almost excited. Like,
See, that's how I want to be.
yes. And I can't say that I just look at death and I'm not at all, because I'm selfishly, there's a lot I want to do. I got pit bikes out there. I got kids. I was hoping y'all could be here
understand.
longer and we could eat some chicken and we could go ride pit bikes. Obviously, you got a lot going on, but so selfishly, I want to be here to enjoy what is here. You know, you get your life set to where you feel like it's good, but at the end of the day, Phil represented that. He always knew that I'm just passing through, but my journey is going to end to the best place ever.
That's right.
And so it made you think deep to realize we're all going to get old. And then I heard an old Jerry Reed song the other day. It said, "We all going to die." And it was talking about dieting, doing this and that. And it was more of a humorous, funny song.
Yeah.
But Phil always had that about him. Like, this is about where are you going? What's your journey? We don't have to be afraid. Live your life best you can. And he just had that quality about him. And even though he was polarized, he was an intimidating man, Phil Robertson was.
Yeah.
But he was a loving intimidation. It's hard to explain.
Yeah.
It's almost like when you did wrong. I remember I went through a stage of my career to where I knew I remember thinking like, man, this whole hunting industry, I don't want to run into Phil Robertson.
That's right.
And I remember Jace called me and he talked me through that point in my life. And it was so unique, but it was with loving discipline and a reminder of what you're capable of. Always remind me of like a football coach or something who maybe they're going to push you a little harder, but they see that you can do better. And Phil had that quality about him, but he just had such a peace about his passing. And selfishly, you know, we all going to miss him, but it's almost like he basically said, "Celebrate, man," which is, you know, shoot, I'm where I need to be and where I want to be and where I knew I would be with Jesus, you know. So,
Michael, what you're describing right there is the definition of meekness. Meekness in the Bible. Some people confuse meekness with weakness. You know, Jesus, gentle Jesus, meek and mild. They think they're kind of weak and soft. It's the opposite of that. When the Bible talks about the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, kind of meekness. Meekness is power under control. It's what Jesus was. Jesus was meek. He had the power and authority as the Son of God to command legions of angels, and yet he was perfectly submissive to the Father's will. And the description in a picture is like that moose behind you. Imagine if you had a moose that was perfectly trained. It is the picture of immense power and capability of great damage. But imagine if you could saddle that thing up and it was perfectly trained to submit to every wish of its rider. It's like a war horse
Yeah.
that can do great damage, but it is only willing to do what its master tells him to do. And that's what I felt Phil was like. He was a guy that would scare you by looking at him, and you knew what he was capable of, but he was good, and he was loving, and he was kind, just like Jesus. And that's what I think we're called to be as men, not weak men, but meek men who have capability to protect, to be dangerous, and to inflict damage in the right places, like people trying to hurt your family, people trying to sabotage your country. And you want to put the fear of God into the forces of darkness, but you're not evil. You're good.
Correct. Yeah, kind of like where you hear people say it's kind of an overused cliche, but don't mistake my kindness for weakness.
Yeah, right.
Same thing.
Exactly.
Don't mistake my meekness for weakness. I mean, meekness and weakness is actually a form of strength, actually, because sometimes it's harder to remain, especially in certain situations, to remain meek when it'd be easier to turn into a completely different creature. And you're right. Phil had that. I think that is what Phil Robertson had. He had a certain power and presence, but an unbelievable kind.
He'd give you the shirt off his back.
Absolutely.
I think he'd lay down his life for somebody if he knew that might bring them to Jesus. That's what he lived for.
But he never minded calling things straight up and straight out. And that was maybe that was a polarizing.
That's what got him in trouble. Yeah. But that's what made us love him.
That's what made him love him.
He's authentic.
He was not.
I remember asking him one time at his house, but it was really a trailer.
Yeah.
You know, and you're thinking, Phil, why do you still live in this double wide trailer?
Yeah.
I mean, you're Phil Robertson. You got a show called Duck Dynasty, like, right? You know, you see Willie in this house, and Jay, everybody's got the big
enjoying the wealth that came.
The big truck and the house, and he just said, "How many toilets does a man need? How big a bed?" He goes, "If I have a bigger bed and a bigger house, it just means it's gonna. I got to chase. There's more room for my wife to get away. I'd have to chase her around longer distance. I like these little quarters.
Smaller areas."
And he said one thing has changed though, and he's sitting there in his white tank top with his camo pants, barefoot and a bandana, and you know, in his little trailer. He said the one thing that has changed is that we have a better menu.
Better menu,
because before it was just squirrel and catfish, you know, whatever he could catch.
That's right.
And now he said we have a nicer menu. We have a few other things.
I tell you, man, even working in this hunting industry, and it's cool to be able to talk about Phil, and especially your experience of those guys getting y'all into duck hunting, and I can imagine how cool that would be. But in the hunting industry, it's like I was always a huge fan of Duck Commander, even way before Duck Dynasty. I mean, Phil had those first of its kind movie type of duck hunting VHS tapes. And I remember as a kid, I was younger than James, and watching those and the way they did things, it was so real and so authentic. And it was almost like a motion picture even then. And the things they would say, the little one-liners, and then as it led to them producing Duck Dynasty, Jace and Willie and all the guys, Justin, all those guys, you know, was involved in that. And then that spun to Duck Dynasty, but those guys have always been some of the most unique, authentic, just great people to be around. And being that I grew up really rural and country, I related to the Robertsons, you know, especially the Phil and the Si, because they felt like uncles to me. Yeah, I felt like, you know, you was gonna probably eat squirrel and gravy. You're gonna have some sweet tea in an old Tupperware cup or something, and so for me, it was a down home feeling. They made me as a young guy in the hunting industry. I just felt like part of their family because I was that guy that come from the country that was used to eating squirrel, catching fish, and you know, I didn't throw bass back.
A California kid, the thought of eating squirrel casserole just makes my skin crawl. You know? But Miss Kay invited us over for squirrel casserole one, and that's how we got to meet him. And sure enough, they had a squirrel. I mean, it was all like stretched out on the top of that casserole, you know, underneath whatever it was, a bunch of stuffing or whatever y'all put underneath, and then that squirrel just laid out there like that.
There. I remember, in fact, there was a line that Phil said. He shot a duck one time, and I thought it was the coolest line. He said, ain't nothing pretty an old, I think it was a greenhead. Ain't nothing pretty an old greenhead duck or something. And of course, I'm going to get it wrong. Any duck commander guys are going to be like, no, Waddell, he said this. But I just remember he said, ain't nothing pretty an old duck, an old greenhead coming in here flying like that. He said, but I think it'd be pretty to see his feet sticking out of some gravy.
Yeah.
And he left it at like he was excited about eating this duck, you know. And I just thought that was such a cool line. But man,